Has been our Sherpa through the UK's election these past 6 to 8 weeks. Good morning, Matthew. It's raining in England, I gather, today.
It is rainy, Hugh, but turnout is said to be very high. So I expect that because people see this as a very close election and a very important election in the UK, we'll see probably record levels of turnout for a general election.
Now, who does that help?
It actually helps the Labour Party, I'd say, because at the moment there are probably quite a few Labour people probably thinking about staying at home, but the turnout level suggests that many people are coming out to vote. So traditionally, high turnout means good for Labour.
Now, did you have any idea of what the internal polling was for the parties last night?
Well, all of the public polling, which is basically the same as the internal polling for the parties, suggests a lead of about 10 points for the Conservative Party, which will point towards a fairly decent majority of 20 to 30 seats for Boris Johnson after today. But with the high levels of turnout and one rogue poll last night, which suggested just a 5-point lead for Boris Johnson, I must say the betting markets have been shifting slightly, and now they say there's basically a 2/3 chance of a majority for Boris and a 1/3 chance of a hung parliament.
Now, the pictures that I see in The Guardian, which has got the same story that is run on every election day everywhere that I've ever seen in the free world, which is long lines at voting stations and bad weather. Are they telling us anything about Scotland and those marginal seats that the Tories really could use?
Well, the latest polling in Scotland suggests that things could be quite good for the Conservatives there. They got 13 seats, a record number in Scotland, the last general election. And there was some doubt at the beginning of this one they'd be able to keep any of those seats. Some people were saying they'd collapse to actually just one seat in Scotland. But actually, the latest polling suggests they'll probably keep 10 or 11 of those seats. The SNP are making some gains, but even the Labour seats are holding up in Scotland. So what we're seeing is, I think, the country really starting to focus on this being a two-horse race. There may be sort of 4 or 5 parties out there in any constituency, but really this is the race between Boris Johnson and Jeremy Corbyn, who can only get in if he heads up quite an unruly wide coalition.
Now, is there a loss of votes to Brexit that is significant? Nigel Farage always stayed on the margins of this campaign, an irritant to people who want to get out of the European Union, an irritant to Boris Johnson. But at the end of the day, do you think it's significant?
It is significant. So, for example, in the latest big YouGov poll in the UK, which was a 100,000 person sample, using MRP statistical analysis. It's quite a major poll. They were pointing to certain seats, like, for example, Workington, which is one of the key sort of seminal bellwether seats in this election, a Labour seat which the Conservatives need to take in order to conquer the Red Wall in the north of England. They were suggesting in Workington, what you might see is actually the Labour Party keep it, retain it, because of the Brexit Party standing there. So without the Brexit Party standing there, the Tories would likely win it. So you could see a good dozen seats in the country that would have been won by the Conservatives, but them losing it to Labour because of the Brexit Party standing.
Now, I read yesterday, I've been reading obsessively everything I can find, and I subscribe that there might be, you mentioned shy Labor voters, that there might be shy anti-Labor Labor voters, meaning they don't want their neighbors to know that they're going to pull the lever for the dreaded Conservatives, but they're going to go pull the lever for the dreaded Conservatives because they hate Corbyn. What do you think of that argument?
Oh, it's just so difficult to know. I think people in those key Labour seats in the North and Midlands that the Conservatives need to get, a lot of them are happy to voice their anti-Corbyn opinions, down the pub and at the school gate. That's quite a normal thing to do because Corbyn's popularity is so low. Being against Jeremy Corbyn is a fairly normal thing to do. But to actually make that step, like you're saying, to say, actually, I'm going to switch from Corbyn to supporting the Tories, is such a big step because some of these areas have very long-term memories of what happened during the 1980s, where with the changes brought about by Thatcherism, some of their local industries went into decline, and they have long memories about that. But the question is, will they make that step? I've got a feeling because of Brexit they will. There's a general feeling in the country. They want to get Brexit done. So what people are talking about on radio shows and in focus groups is about lending their support to Boris Johnson. Not making a permanent switch to the nasty Conservatives, so-called, but lending their support to Boris to get Brexit done.
Now, there are a couple of high-profile Tories who are in trouble, including Dominic Raab. Does he make it through this?
I think he will. The latest YouGov poll I talked about suggested the Lib Dems were just 2% behind in Isha in his seat. But I've got a feeling he will squeak through there. But it would be fascinating to see the levels of tactical voting in this general election. Of course, with Nigel Farage stepping down in all the Tory seats, that really united the Leave alliance in the UK election, but the Remain alliance was fractured. What we're seeing is with these constituency polls, with the MRP polls, is actually lots of people locally sharing them on social media to point out which Remain supporting party Remain voters should vote for in order to get a hung parliament. So that could be a big feature, quite unusually, in this election.
The Tories got caught sleeping in the Theresa May election, and they also got beat online. How about this time? Are they awake, and are they online at least the equal of the Labour Party activists?
They are equal in terms of output from the party. They're under superb online social media operation this time round. They brought two people over from New Zealand to do it, who've just been involved in a very successful Australian election for the Liberal Party over there, the Liberal Party being a centre-right party in Australia. So they've done a superb job in this election. We still have the problem that Conservative posts don't tend to be shared as much online as Labour posts. Perhaps people are shyer online to sort of announce their support for the Conservatives. But in terms of output, they've been superb.
Now, in terms of the turning point in the election, when we look back tomorrow and say this mattered, that mattered, will it be the picture of the boy sleeping on the NHS hospital floor? Will it be the ice sculpture sitting in for Boris Johnson? Will it be Andrew Marr yelling at Boris? What will it be? The anti-Semitism of Labour?
All of those are key points. I think the big key point, though, will be Nigel Farage's decision to step down in the Conservative seats. That was a key moment that united the Leave side of things. But you're right to say as well that this week, in those crucial final days, when lots of voters only just start tuning in the final week, start thinking about how they're going to vote, that picture of the boy on the floor in the NHS spread like wildfire on social media. That said, there are doubts about the veracity of it. Some people would say it was fake news. Some people would say it was staged. And again, these stories have been shared online. But it's true to say that far from this week, the final week being all about getting Brexit done, it has shone a light on the NHS. But at the same time, there was a recording leaked of a Labour frontbencher, a member of Jeremy Corbyn's cabinet, saying how he didn't trust Jeremy Corbyn, how the intelligence services in the UK wouldn't be able to trust Jeremy Corbyn with all of the intelligence that MI6 and MI5 gathers. Those are really quite bizarre statements in a sense for a Labour frontbench to make. They were also widely shared online. So I think in a sense, it will help people make a decision. It's really, Boris getting Brexit done, security for the country, good for the economy, versus Jeremy Corbyn, really rather extreme and a big security risk.
My last question for you, Matthew Elliott, till we talk tomorrow. What is your prediction of whether or not the Tories have a majority, and if so, by how many?
So I think they will get a majority, and if I was a betting man, which I'm not, I'd put my money on a majority of 20.
Well, that would be a great relief, and Brexit would get done, right? But it wouldn't last very long because of by-elections, right? They'd have to hurry up.
A majority of 20 would be fine. I mean, compared to having a hung parliament that we currently have, it'd be like night and day. It'd be far easier. And, thankfully, MPs are healthier than they used to be, so I'm pretty confident that a majority would last to parliament. But here's hoping that it's much higher than 20, because we could have a situation where, far be from 20, it could actually be 40 or 50 or 60, we've got a special election here where anything could happen.
We will talk again, Matthew Elliott, soon about what did happen. I appreciate, again, your being our Sherpa throughout this. Thank you, my friend. Have a good election day. The longest day of the year for people like Matthew and me.